little pawns, knights, kings and queens, bishops and rooks, we may open up this dialogue, if you wish, to questions and answers for those whose names have been drawn. And do not worry, there will be another opportunity if we get through these to draw more names for more interaction later on in this transmission. Let us begin. Is the first chess piece upon the board?
Good day, Bashar.
And you good day.
Thank you. I have a question about appearances.
Appearances.
And the superficiality of appearances that I seem to get caught up in, and
choose.
That I choose to get caught up in.
Thank
It
you.
seems to be the collective agreement in the world I live in.
It has become something of an agreement, but it does not have to be. Again, if you are aware of the fact that it has been created as an experience within the collective agreement, then you are also equally aware of the fact that you can opt out of that particular part of the agreement, yes?
Well, that's why I'm here, because I feel like I have judgments that I would like to get rid of.
Well, how do they serve you to have them?
They keep me separate from people.
And how does that serve you? What do you fear about not being separate?
So this is about fear.
Almost always.
Yeah.
Because remember, the idea is that when you have a negative belief, the negative belief will generate fear, because all emotions stem from beliefs and definitions. So if you find that you have some negative definition, it's going to generate the idea of that fear, and the fear is there to let you know that you have a negative belief so you can find out what it is and change it if you actually truly know that it doesn't serve you. But if you hold on to it, then you're actually saying you have a belief that it does serve you somehow. Not that it necessarily actually does, but you have a belief that it does, which is the only reason you would hold on to something you say you don't prefer, is that you actually have, in what you call your unconscious level, an idea that it does serve you, and so you hold on to it, and you keep reliving it. So you have to find out how you're defining this idea, how you're defining your relationship to other people, circumstances, and situations that would make it seem to your benefit to hold on to something you say you don't prefer, because that's the only reason you would hold on to something you say you don't prefer, is that you make it seem to be beneficial. And that's done by defining it as beneficial because of perhaps a fear of the opposite. So to use your fear in a positive way, go fully into the fear and ask yourself, what do I imagine is the worst possible thing I'm afraid will happen if I, in fact, stop doing this behavior? And the answer is, what's the worst possible thing you fear will happen if you stop doing those surface appearance judgments?
That I'll get stuck
in what?
In situations I don't want to be in.
I see. Do you understand, first and foremost, of course, that the idea of such surface appearance judgments are simply projections of self-judgments?
In theory, yes.
Oh, in practice?
Maybe 50% of the time. I'm
All
working
of
on
the
it.
time.
I'm working on it.
I know.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, they are all about the idea of how you view yourself in relation to creation. Thus then, what judgments are you heaping upon yourself and finding yourself wanting?
Right.
Because you see, the only reason you'd be heaping the judgments on others to keep yourself separate is because you're afraid that if you actually interact, you'll find something out about yourself you don't want to find out. Not because that thing is actually true, but you believe it is, you fear it is. So you keep your distance through the idea of judgment, of surface appearance, so you will never have to face the fact that you yourself have a belief that you may not be worth interacting with.
Right.
You see how that works?
Yes.
Very simple, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, if you understand that that's not really empirically true, then you would not hold on to that idea. You would not have to project those ideas because you obviously are worth interacting with. Believe me, if you weren't, we wouldn't be interacting with you.
Right.
And believe me, if you weren't worthy of interaction, really, you wouldn't exist. Because the creation doesn't create mistakes in that sense. It doesn't create things that don't belong. It doesn't create things that are unworthy. That can't happen. So if you exist, it obviously means you are worthy to exist or you wouldn't. Because in order for you to exist, creation must have known that you needed to exist in order for all that is to really be all that is. You understand that?
Yes.
Therefore, stop arguing with creation. Stop saying, I am unworthy.
Right.
If that were true, you wouldn't exist and you wouldn't be capable of saying, I am unworthy. That's the paradox. If you can say, I'm unworthy, you must be worthy, or you wouldn't exist to be able to say that.
Right. So either way, we're worthy.
You cannot be anything else.
Yes.
Now it's just a matter of getting in touch with ideas and beliefs that you may have bought into that don't really serve you, because you see, again, when you truly allow yourself to rise up, raise your vibration, and go to the level of the belief systems, you will then discover that when you identify the belief that you've been holding on to that doesn't align with your true self, the moment you identify it, it will automatically appear nonsensical and illogical because it doesn't belong to you. You pick this belief up about yourself somewhere along the line, growing up in your society, and you probably picked it up from your parents, from your society, from your friends, from somewhere else, and you believed it, you bought into it. But now you're exploring the idea that it doesn't fit quite right, it doesn't feel quite right. You know you're uncomfortable with it, but you don't exactly know how to take it off. The idea to recognize is that once you raise your vibration and identify what the actual belief is, as we just described for you to some degree, you will realize that once you identify it, it makes no sense. And the reason it makes no sense is because it doesn't belong to you. It came from someone else. It's someone else's belief that you're running around with. You're carrying someone else's belief. So please don't be a belief thief. Let go of things that don't belong to you. You understand?
Yes.
Is this helping you?
Yeah. Are we going to talk about how to do that?
Well, in a sense, I just told you.
Okay.
The
Yes.
idea is to recognize that this must come behavior. Behavior. Go back down the list. You have the diagram. You have the list. Look at the list. What you're describing is what? Behavior. Yes?
Yes.
Behavior comes from
Beliefs.
your thoughts,
Yes.
your emotions, your beliefs, first of all. The belief you have creates the feeling you have creates the thought, all three together. The way you create them creates your behavior. So all you have to do is follow the line back up. If I am exhibiting this behavior, I am having the thoughts that go with it. Where do the thoughts come from? The thoughts come from feelings I'm having. Where do the feelings come from? They come from beliefs I'm having. What must I believe to be true in order to be behaving this way? That's the question. Sit with it quietly, knowing there is an answer, and you will be given the answer. You will see the answer if you're willing to see the answer, if you're not afraid of seeing the answer. If you are afraid of seeing the answer, find out what belief you're holding on to that makes you afraid to see the answer that would help you change the belief, because that has to be coming from another belief. Yes?
Yes.
Therefore, you have exactly the road you need to walk, exactly the path you need to retrace in order to allow yourself to find out what that belief is and let it go by recognizing, once you identify it, that it doesn't belong to you. Do you hold on to things that don't belong to you when you recognize they don't belong to you?
No.
Then that's all it takes. You see, there's no mysterious process involved. Once you have identified the belief as not being in alignment with your true self, that means it doesn't belong to you. And once you recognize it doesn't belong to you, you drop it. It's gone. There's no other special additional process required. It's just gone. Do you understand?
Yes.
Does this help?
Yes.
Are you willing to believe it can be this simple?
I believe that once I get to that core thing and the core belief of being worthy, that everything will unravel and it will be straightforward.
All right, then whatever journey you create, whatever process you create in finally realizing what that core belief is your particular unique process. Love it, cherish it as you experience it. Don't judge it to be less than it should be. Otherwise, all you'll be doing is perpetuating the same level of judgment.
Right.
Make sense?
Yes.
Is this helping you?
Yes.
Then we thank you for your sharing.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Hello, Bashar.
And you good day.
I have two questions.
Oh, all right.
The first one is about mastermind groups.
Mastermind groups.
Yes.
Define.
It's, well, what I'd like to do is put together a group of about 4 or 5 people
Yes.
to come together to bring our collective energy towards our individual goals.
Sounds like fun. What's stopping you from doing it?
Well, nothing's stopping me. There's one more person that I want to invite to the group.
Oh, all right.
But I'm wondering if you have any format or
Nope.
outline that you think would be
Nope.
helpful.
Nope. Whatever comes in your imagination is key to your vibration. Whatever seems most exciting, most fun, most passion fulfilling is the way for you to go about it. You understand?
Yes.
It's that simple.
Okay, great.
Yes. And?
Okay, question number 2.
Yes.
So in terms of appearances, there's a certain way that I like for my body to look.
Oh, all right.
And this is just continuing with what, you just said, but I'd like it more specific to
Yes.
this situation.
Yes.
So I have a format, I have a trainer and
All right.
I'm supposed to do what she says, but then there are moments where I don't want to do it.
Oh, all right.
What is that?
Well, it can be resistance, and it also can simply be the recognition that there are certain times you don't necessarily need to do it that way. You have to learn to tell the difference. You have to learn to have enough discernment to tell when you are experiencing a choice from excitement or choosing something from anxiety. That's the difference you have to be able to discern. Yes?
Do you think the same thing can be chosen from either anxiety or
Absolutely.
joy?
Every single thing in physical reality can serve double duty. Put positive meaning into it, you'll get a positive effect out of it. Put a negative meaning into the very same thing, you'll get a negative effect out of it. You can choose the very same thing from excitement or the very same thing from anxiety. It just depends upon the circumstances and the moment, how you have set them up for yourself, what the situation is, how you have chosen to play it out, how you've set the stage for yourself as to what it actually means in terms of what meaning you've put into it, and thus then why you're choosing it. But you have to be capable of being aware of why you're making your choices. That's the discernment you need to have. And if you're really honest with yourselves, you can always tell the difference between when you're making a choice from true excitement and when you're making a choice from anxiety, can't you?
Sure.
Sure you can. So, just be honest with yourselves and you'll know the difference. Make sense?
Yes, and if it's something that I've committed to do,
Yes.
I guess the secret would be to bring myself into alignment with this thing that I've committed to do before doing it.
Either that, or make a new agreement with the person you've made the commitment with and explain that you finally recognize that you made the commitment, if such is the case, from a place of anxiety instead of from a place of excitement, if that's the case. And then make a new agreement, make a new arrangement, because the first commitment in that sense is to be your true self. And that's a commitment you're making to them as well, to be your true self. You follow?
I do. I think that on one hand, there's the excitement of having, my body look exactly the way I want it to look, and
Yes.
it's fun.
Yes.
But then on the other hand, there's this anxiety of, what the woman before was talking about, like appearance and
Yes.
getting stressed that way. So
Yes.
it's kind of like both sides.
I understand, but you see, of course, you're setting up your own paradox, because very often when you allow yourself to create stress and anxiety about how you look, you actually don't allow yourself to be in the flow of the vibration that would actually allow you to behave in such a way that would automatically allow you to choose to do the things that would get your body to look the way you want it to. Does that make sense?
I think I'll have to get the recording.
All right. In other words, when you're truly following your joy, you will automatically want to do certain things. They will not seem to be chores. Do you understand? You will automatically gravitate to certain things that will automatically allow you to begin to do whatever you need to do to allow the body to function in its optimal state. It's only the anxiety about such things that actually makes it more difficult for you to actually behave in the way that you need to behave to allow the body to find its optimum state.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
Yes.
Hello, Bashar.
And you good day.
I'm fairly new to your teachings, but I've recently had some wonderful experiences with your idea that abundance is not money. Abundance is having the resources to do what you want to do when you want to do them.
Yes, abundance is not necessarily money.
Right.
We are not discounting that because it exists on your planet as one of the ways abundance can manifest itself, but it's not the only way.
Yeah. And I was resistant when I first heard that, but I
All right.
eased myself into it and thought, well, okay, I'll go along with that.
Oh, all right.
And things have been happening. It's like, whoa,
Yes,
it's really
whoa.
fun. In fact, that's why I am here today.
All right, thank you.
So I have a question about creativity.
Yes,
I'm afraid you're just going to tell me to sit down and meditate and go up. Okay.
you are afraid that I will say that?
Yes, because I feel like in some way
Do you
I've done
understand that your fear creates your reality just as strongly as your joy does?
Lay it on me. I know.
All right.
I know. And I have some kind of resistance about creativity that I don't quite get. And I feel like...
Can you be more specific?
Okay, as a writer. Although I feel like if I went and became an artist, I would do the same thing. There's a point at which I think, oh man, I know it's common to writers and artists, but there are some writers who don't have that kind of resistance.
So what? What's that got to do with you?
I want to be that kind of writer.
Then allow yourself to be whatever kind of writer you are now, because that's how they became that kind of writer. By simply allowing whatever they were at any given moment to be exactly what that needed to be at that moment. Thus, by not invalidating what kind of writer they are now, they're capable of using that moment as a stepping stone to become a different kind of writer. If you invalidate the kind of writer you are now, you remove the stepping stone and cannot take the next step.
Wow. So I become okay with struggling?
It is not that you are okay with struggling. You don't have to prefer the idea of struggling. What we are saying is that when you become okay with who you are now, at whatever level you're at, you will actually cease to experience struggle.
I like that.
Very creatively stated.
Okay.
It is not about preferring struggle. It is about knowing and acknowledging that whatever level you're at now is perfect for the level you're at. It's perfectly that level. And thus then, it's not about comparing yourself or measuring yourself against some ideal that you are not yet as good as. It's making that difference that's driving you crazy and creating the struggle. Stop creating such a difference between who you are now in a negative way and who you will eventually become. Yes, of course you will be different, but you'll just be a different. You won't be, in that sense, a better different. You'll just be a different. You understand?
Thank you. Yes, that was very clear, and I understood the whole idea of feeling unworthy in a new way.
What a surprise.
How you just explained that.
Yes.
Is that the same idea also with struggles with my body? That I see people who have
It's
no
usually
struggles with
all
their body.
related. It's usually
Okay.
all related. Remember, all pain is resistance to the natural self.
Okay.
So,
And the natural self is who I am right at this
the
moment.
natural self is who you are, is whatever is represented, whatever contains the highest amount of passion, joy, love, excitement. Excitement is the body's physical translation of the vibratory energy that represents your true natural core self. It's your compass needle pointing to your magnetic north. Follow it.
Okay.
All
you.
will fall into place.
Okay.
Does that help?
Very much. Thank you.
Do you feel more creative?
No. No, I
Why
don't.
not?
I feel more excited.
Is that not the beginning of creativity?
Yes.
Well, then, do you feel more creative?
No, because I get that excitement a lot. And then I get
But you are
feeling
labeling
creative,
it
and then I
as
stop
something
it.
other than what you wish to label it as.
Say that
Why
again.
not label the excitement as an increase and an expansion of your creative abilities?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Oh, thank you.
All
Why
right.
label the idea of the excitement you feel as something other than what you would prefer to label it as? Because it's only going to take its cue from what you label it to be. It doesn't have built-in meaning. You can decide anytime you feel excited, that must mean you're becoming more creatively inspired. You can decide that. And when you decide that, you will start to experience that. But you won't experience it if you don't label it that way. It's up
Okay.
to you to be creative enough to create the labels you prefer that will help you become more creative.
I understand what you're saying.
But-
I have felt that bit, but because I'm afraid that after I feel the
Yes.
excitement and get creative and do
Yes.
that, then I will stop.
All right, very good. Thank you for being honest enough to recognize you have a fear.
Yes.
So what is the worst possible thing you fear will happen if, in fact, you allow yourself to be creative? That it will stop and stop forever?
Yes.
All right. Now, why would you choose to experience that?
So then I,
I will,
won't have
before
to do
you
anything.
answer, before you answer why you might choose to experience the idea of forever stopping being creative, I would like to just quietly remind you that that's an actually very creative thing to choose. To imagine that you might stop being creative forever is very creative as an idea. So you see, you're even using creativity to make it seem as if you might lose your creativity, but it takes creativity to think of that. To think that you could lose creativity forever is a very creative idea. So you're using creativity even to create that. You just have to start looking at it that way. It's like we said when the person was talking about the idea of abundance. You can define the idea of having lack as being a lack of abundance, or you can define the idea of lack as having an abundance of lack. Which means you still have abundance. It's just that you have a kind of abundance you don't prefer. And so it's not about learning to be abundant. It's just learning to be the kind of abundant you prefer. So it's not about you not being creative every moment, because you are creative every moment. If you weren't creative every moment, every second, without fail, you wouldn't be having any kind of an experiential reality at all, because you're creating your reality every moment. So the idea is to understand that even if you experience the idea of what you call lack of creativity, you're using creativity to create that experience, so you are being creative anyway. You can't get away from it. You are made in the image of the Creator. You're a co-creator. You can do nothing but create. It's your nature. Even if you create the appearance that you're not creative, the only way you could do that is by being an infinitely creative being. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Is this sinking in a little bit more?
It is sinking in a little bit more.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Is
actually
the
am
butt
feeling
getting
very
any
creative.
smaller at all?
I'm feeling very, very, very creative right now.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know why I even want to do all this though, because
Do all what?
when
Do
I
all
think
what?
of
Do
stopping
all
it
what?
forever, it's
Do
like
all what?
be a writer.
You don't know why. Do you have to?
No, because when I stop thinking I have to, well, or if I don't think I have to, or if I just drop the whole idea, then after a while I think, oh man, I want to be a writer. So there's sort of, and I've done a lot of writing. I am a writer.
How about,
but it's this constant,
how about, instead of spending so much time thinking you want to be a writer, how about you just write if you're excited to write? And just let the label take care of itself. Because if you just write because you're excited to write, someone else will look at you and say, oh, you must be a writer. You don't have to think about wanting to be a writer. All you have to do is write when you're moved to write.
yeah.
So again, don't create that separation.
Okay.
The act is the thing. Just write when you're moved to write. And when you're writing, you're a writer. Period.
When I'm not, I'm not. I can have them both.
Yes, you can do anything. You shift your personality many times a day. At a moment, you might be a writer. At another moment, you might be something else. That's all right. They will all fall under the umbrella of your highest excitement, or at least expressions of your highest excitement, whatever that is. They'll all fall under that umbrella in some way, shape, or form, as long as everything you choose is some expression of your excitement or your passion. It's up to you. But you don't have to define yourself by such narrow terms.
Great.
You follow?
Yes.
All right. And remember, in many ways, part of being, as you say on your planet, a writer is just spending a lot of time sitting and musing and imagining.
Right.
That's also the work of writing. It doesn't mean you actually have to be clicking away on your keyboard or writing on your paper.
Right.
You understand?
Oh, yes.
So,
yes.
even when you are doing something else, you can still know that what you are is a writer doing that thing. And when you're writing, you can be something else doing some writing. You can blend these things, merge these things as simply different expressions of an overall umbrella excitement of expressing who you really are in all the ways that you can.
Okay.
So relax your definitions, relax your labels. Don't pigeonhole yourself into such narrow definitions.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Have fun.
Okay.
Have fun.
Okay.
Have fun.
Thank you.
I will say good day to you this day of your time. We will begin this transmission in the following way. First and foremost, we will thank each and every one of you, individually and all of you together collectively, for sharing in this transmission and the interactions that will take place later today of your time. Things in your reality have shifted. New parallel realities are constantly coming into existence along a new course of energy, a new direction of vibration and frequency. And in accordance with these shifts that have now taken place, the transmission will contain some different information. We will this day be discussing and sharing with you perspectives and information having to do with what we will call 9 levels of consciousness. The 9 levels of consciousness we will be dealing with will have to do with those levels that are immediately relevant to your physical reality experience, even though some of these levels may not in and of themselves be physical expressions of consciousness. They are intimately connected to your experience of physical reality, and your physical consciousness, your physical mind, can and does connect to and call upon information from these levels. And in connecting to and calling upon information from these levels does thus then determine exactly how your experience of physical reality will be created, will determine the quality of that experience of physical reality. Now, notice that generally speaking, we say your experience of physical reality rather than in physical reality, because physical reality is not actually something you are in. It is something that is in you. It is in your consciousness. It is an experience of your consciousness. And in this description of the 9 levels of consciousness we will be addressing in this transmission today, we will endeavor to clarify certain aspects of consciousness we have covered before, but which we have never delved into in this degree, in this way, so that you can have a much clearer understanding and a clearer ability, a stronger ability to deal with different levels of your own consciousness, to understand how those levels work with each other, and thus then to allow a more balanced experience of physical reality to occur within your consciousness. We will begin by giving names and labels and identifications to these different levels, some of which you have heard, some of which you may not have heard of. Nevertheless, you will see in time how they relate. Again, of course, remembering that these levels are simply arbitrary divisions created within an overall consciousness that you are, a greater being that you are. But the vibrational differentiations created within your consciousness give rise to these different experiences of levels, of dimensions of consciousness that all exist within your greater being. We will start at the level that is highest in frequency and yet still relevant to the idea of your physical experience, that level that is referred to as the oversoul. Now, some individuals on your planet often refer to this by a variety of names, oversoul being one of them. Some refer to this as celestial soul, and you can use that term if you wish, although it is also possible to assign the term celestial soul to something even higher than the oversoul, and perhaps even more representative of the greater being we initially referred to. But for now, we will use the concept of oversoul as that which can extend itself and express itself as many individualized souls, or spirits, if you wish. In this context, the term individual soul, which is the next level down in frequency under the oversoul, and individual spirit being interchangeable terms, synonymous for the purpose of this transmission with one another. So, oversoul can, in a sense, extend itself, or, if you wish, split itself into a multitude of individual souls or individual spirits, each of which can experience individually what we are also about to describe, should such an individual soul choose to experience the idea of physical reality. What we are about to describe is generally the path that is created, generally the overall blueprint that is created from that level down to crystallize within the consciousness the experience of physical reality. Once the oversoul has split itself into a multitude of individual souls or spirits, thus then a spirit choosing to have a physical incarnation experience will thus then split itself even further, vibrationally speaking. The first layer it will split itself into will be the idea of the higher mind and the physical mind. Now, higher mind remains non-physical as a representation of the spirit vibration. But it is not the whole spirit. In that sense, it is still part and parcel of something that has split itself to create a physical reality experience. And just as the physical mind experiences a discrete and distinct physical world, physical realm, physical reality, so too the higher mind actually has its own world, its own realm. Now, in the physical world, you will notice that it is mostly defined by the idea of what you call three-dimensional space and one dimension of time. But in the higher mind's realm, in the higher mind's reality, a fuller experience of multidimensional time is capable of being experienced, whereas not necessarily so much space is required. You will find thus then that just as the physical mind can appear to navigate in 3 dimensions of space, the higher mind can navigate in multiple dimensions of time. And this is why, from the higher mind's perspective, it can experience what the physical mind calls past, present, and future all at once, and has the point of view that gives it the broad, big picture view that allows it to guide the physical mind on its journey through the idea of third-dimensional space. So there are 2 parallel worlds, in a sense. The world of the higher mind, in which certain kinds of experiences can be had. The world of the physical mind, in which certain other kinds of experiences can be had. And these are 2 discrete and distinct kinds of realities, far different than the combined reality of the individual soul or the spirit, which contains all of this, but operates on a higher frequency, even as the oversoul also operates on a multidimensional higher frequency, allowing it to experience a multitude of individual souls simultaneously. Now, going down, as we said, vibrationally from the oversoul to the individual soul or spirit, to the higher mind and to the physical mind, in between the 2, there is yet another vibratory plane. And this is what we have referred to as the template level reality that separates the non-physical higher mind world from the physical world. This template reality is kind of a hybrid of both. It is like unto a blueprint reality in which the higher mind can set up certain kinds of blueprints or templates of what the physical mind portion of its whole being may experience. And as we have said in past transmissions, when the higher mind and the physical mind can function in a balanced relationship, then that allows the whole being to express itself in a balanced way. The whole being that is experiencing physical reality. This is why it is important for the physical mind to work in conjunction and in relationship with higher mind, so that it functions holistically, taking advantage of the view of the higher mind in its world and augmenting it with the perspective of the physical mind in its specific discrete realm. But the way to do this, the level of reality through which this connection is accomplished, this relationship is accomplished, is the template level reality, which is a world unto itself. And in this template level reality, where the blueprints of physical reality are laid out to be experienced, there is a conduit in this reality that connects higher mind and physical mind, and we have referred to this as the conduit you call imagination. This is where you allow yourself the freedom to let the perspective of the higher mind, the telepathic communications of the higher mind, free rein to filter through the template level reality into the receiver that has been created in physical reality, which is called the physical brain, that thus then allows the perceiver of the physical mind, which is composed, as we have said, of belief systems and emotions and thought patterns and behaviors, to function in the way that it needs to explore the concept called physical reality. But now, within the physical world, even though we have said it is composed of these belief systems and emotion systems and thought systems, there is something we would like to very specifically clarify about the way these are arranged in physical reality. Because we understand in that the way this concept has been transmitted and in the way that your language has been designed to interpret this concept of the threefold personality structure has led you to believe, in a sense, that it exists in a certain structure, and in fact, the structure it actually exists in is exactly upside down and opposite from the way humans tend to think. In other words, when we talk about the idea of this three-part physical mind, composed of beliefs and emotions and thoughts, there are specific vibratory levels in which these things are manifest. The vibratory level in the physical mind in which belief systems are manifested is often referred to by your society as the unconscious mind. The level of the mind in which emotions are generated is often referred to as the subconscious mind. The level in which the thoughts are generally experienced is simply called the conscious mind. Now, herein lies a little bit of confusion and a need for some degree of clarification. Because from your physical perspective, you have been taught or trained to view the idea of your conscious mind and your thoughts as being, so to speak, on top, and the idea of your emotions being a level below that, and the idea of your belief systems being buried even further below that. Because of this perspective, you actually have an erroneous image of how this is structured. In reality, belief systems in the unconscious mind are on the top level vibrationally. Emotions are on the center level, as they were, but thoughts are on the lowest level vibrationally. Look at it this way in terms of how the personality structure is created, because it comes down in vibration from the higher levels through the template reality, and the first level that's created, the level that's closest representationally to the higher mind, is the unconscious level, which contains the beliefs which come from the template level reality, because beliefs and definitions are blueprints that determine what the levels below that will experience. So you actually go from a belief level that is higher than an emotional level vibrationally, and you go from an emotional level that is higher than the level of thoughts vibrationally. Even though you tend to think that you dig down in your personality vibrationally to find your beliefs, in order to actually experience and identify your beliefs, you actually have to raise your vibration to go up into the unconscious level. That is the main difference, and therein lies some of the main confusion within some of the processes that exist on your planet for finding out what your definitions and beliefs are, because there is an automatic assumption in many people on your planet that you actually have to go deeper down into your consciousness to find your beliefs, when in fact you actually have to raise your frequency and go up to find them, because those beliefs are closer to the template level reality from which they were generated and closer to the higher mind who generated the original blueprints. But there are levels below even this, below the thought level. There is an 8th level below that we will call the automatic mind on an individual level. And this is wherein you experience the idea of what you typically call patterns of behavior, habits of behavior. It is, in a sense, a kind of unconsciousness, a kind of unawareness, but it is not the same term we are using now when we define the idea of the unconscious level that contains beliefs, which is actually higher than this level, and higher than emotions, and higher than the thought level. This is a different kind of unconsciousness or unawareness, a different kind of limitation, segregation, or separation of consciousness that creates the idea of patterns you are unaware of, habits you are unaware of, until such time as you bring them into your conscious awareness. Quite often doing this by discovering what your beliefs are, and thus by raising your vibration to find out what those beliefs are, finding out what those patterns are that lock into and reinforce the idea of beliefs that may have generated those particular unaware, unconscious patterns below the level of conscious thought. And there is yet again a 9th level, even lower than that you typically refer to as the collective unconscious. This is where the collective agreements are made of things that are so automatic, so assumed to be a given that you don't really think about them at all, such as certain common factors or attributes about what you call the experience of physical reality, such as gravity and time and space and up and down and left and right, and those kinds of things all are in the lowest possible level of what you call the collective unconscious, where all of the collective agreements reside to a degree and in such a manner that you don't need to think about them at all, you just experience them. On the 8th level of individual automatic behavior, you still can experience your relationship to the collective unconscious, to the collective agreements. What is your personal relationship, in a sense, unconsciously to these things? What patterns have you agreed to within yourself individually that you're not necessarily paying attention to? But herein, in this level, are the things that can be translated into conscious awareness by the utilization of the top 3 levels of thoughts and feelings and beliefs. But you must work it from the belief level first, because that's highest to the level that those beliefs were created in, generated from. I know this sounds paradoxical, but this is actually the way it is structured. And beliefs are not deep, deep down. They are much higher than feelings and much higher than thoughts in terms of their vibrational frequency. So if thus then, in having created from the oversoul, the individual soul or spirit that thus then chooses to have a physical experience and thus then further separates itself into higher mind in its own realm, creating the template level reality through which to translate its ideas, its concepts into physical blueprint material, and thus then generates the physical personality capable of perceiving or experiencing what the higher mind has generated in those blueprints, starting with the unconscious belief system level, going down through the emotional level, going down to the thought level, and down further into the automatic behavior level, and down further into anchoring itself to the physical experience by going down to the collective agreement level, you then have the 9 levels in total that are necessary for the creation of the experience of a physical reality in this context. Now, one more word about the idea of the confusion about the 3 levels of thought and feeling and belief. And whereas heretofore you thought that belief was on the lowest level, this is where also we will speak to the idea where some confusion exists now with respect to the idea of these 3 levels, and in thinking that the belief system is the lowest level, to see how this particular point of view can actually cause some difficulty in understanding the patterns and behaviors that are in that lower unconscious level. Because when individuals on your planet label the idea that belief systems are actually vibrationally lower, that you must actually go down in consciousness to find your beliefs, what they're actually doing is heading down into the 8th and 9th levels instead of going up to where the belief systems actually are. By assuming that beliefs are down, you actually lower your frequency and get caught up in the idea of the unconscious patterns and habits and reinforce them instead of actually discovering what the beliefs are by raising your frequency. This is why many individuals on your planet actually have a great degree of difficulty in accessing the concept of their beliefs and defining their beliefs, is because they have this particular template overlaying their idea of what physical consciousness is, of what the personality structure is. And because they believe that they must dive deeper down, they actually take their vibration back down into the level of the pattern, the habit, behaviors on that deep unconscious level. In searching for their beliefs, they only, in a sense, reattach themselves to those patterned behaviors, those habitual behaviors, wondering why they keep getting caught up in that again and again and again and again. A lot of it has to do with this upside down definition that humans on your planet have of exactly where belief systems reside within the personality structure. So, to allow more clarity, to allow yourself to finally bring those behavioral patterns in the deep 8th level individual unconscious mind to come to the level of consciousness so they can be dealt with, you must actually raise your frequency, go up to the level of the belief systems, then make your rearrangements there and allow the new beliefs that are put into place to then filter down through the personality levels again with a new frequency, realigning everything as it filters back down and recreates and recrystallizes and restructures the personality so as to then make the new personality that has now been realigned capable, transparent enough of a receiver to allow for recognition of those patterns, to be able to understand how to let those patterns and habits bubble up into the personality structure in order to be dealt with by the thoughts, by the emotions, by the belief systems that have now been rearranged to allow for greater insight and greater clarity, greater receptivity, greater discernment, greater ability to perceive those particular habits and pattern belief system thoughts that exist way down in that 8th level and even further down in the 9th with respect to your individual agreements as they relate to the collective agreements of your entire society. A diagram either has been or will be provided so that you can follow along these ideas clearly and allow for easy remembering of how this is actually structured. So fear not, you will be able to see, as you say, in black and white before your eyes, a very simple diagram that will allow you great clarity in understanding how these levels are arranged within your total consciousness, within the 9 levels we have just described. And thus then, following along what we have just explained in clarifying how these levels actually relate to one another and what position they actually occupy within your consciousness, you can now allow yourself greater opportunity to understand how your consciousness works, and you can, through various forms of meditation or various forms of action, allow yourself greater experience in seeing how this new understanding can allow you to arrange the personality structure in such a fashion as to experience physical reality in a much more synchronistic way, in a much more aligned way, when you allow yourself to let the vibrational levels remain in their proper relationship and don't create belief systems or definitions that take them out of their proper relationship with each other, which has been to some degree part of what many of you experience as difficulty in getting a handle on many of the concepts we have shared with you, many of the tools that we have shared with you through a variety of transmissions. Many of you may ask, well, Bashar, why not deliver this template first so that then the subsequent tools that you delivered would be more understandable, more capable of being used in conjunction with a clearer understanding of how the idea of consciousness is arranged? That's a very good question, and we will answer it. Thank you very much. There is always a timing to the way we transmit the idea of tools to your society. And even though this tool, now that we are speaking of, the 9 levels of consciousness, could have provided a greater level of clarity in using the tools we delivered through all of the time we have been communicating with you, the irony and the paradox is you didn't have enough tools in order to understand what we have now just delivered. Even though this seems very simplistic as a tool and very simplistic as a structure, at least from our point of view, you actually had to have tools. You had to be given certain tools first in order to be allowed time to practice with those tools, so that by the time it came time to deliver this tool, you would actually have the ability to comprehend how this tool can be applied to what we have already delivered in information. That's the paradox about how this is structured. But now that we are delivering this tool, it is timing, by definition, for you to understand how your consciousness is layered, how the frequencies exist and relate to one another in your collective consciousness, in your individual consciousness, in your higher consciousness, on all levels of the 9 levels we have now just described. This is one of the major keys now, and you can insert this key into all we have said and use this new key to truly clarify how you go about figuring out what is going on within your consciousness and how to apply this tool to find out and identify what beliefs are necessary to realign and transform in order for you to create more crystal clarity in the personality complex that thus then is more capable of being a better receiver, a more transparent receiver for the things that are going on in your individual pattern and habit behavior level and your collective agreement level. This now is one of the final keystones of information required by your society to accelerate itself now toward what you call the collective consciousness acceleration in your year of 2012. And we will be dealing with many facets of this particular 9 levels of consciousness now as we have delivered them to you in a variety of ways to make sure that this idea, this concept, coming from your higher mind through the template level reality and into your physical mind takes root in the way that it needs to take root, so that you can know you have the keys and the tools you need and a complete set of these ideas while you accelerate into your experience of the collective consciousness crossing of the threshold that you call your year of 2012. We will also provide, now in this transmission and in future transmissions, different kinds of meditations, different kinds of dialogues that will augment and enhance your understanding and ability to use this particular key, this particular template, this particular framework, so that you can make sure that you have the greatest opportunity, the greatest amount of choice, the greatest amount of ability to shift in the directions that you prefer to. Because again, remember, you're shifting all the time, billions of times a second. And so this is all about getting a greater awareness of the fact that you are shifting and a greater ability to design and define the parallel realities that you shift to. The 9 levels of consciousness will be of paramount importance in your understanding, in your ability to view this arrangement of consciousness, in making this picture, in making this visual sink in to your personality structure. You will thus then be implementing a rewiring of your neurological framework in a very specific manner. And this rewiring can cause a much greater degree of accelerated synchronicity in your life. Many of you have already begun to experience the leading edge of this communication before we even gave it in verbal terms. You are beginning to see much more astonishing and astounding synchronicities popping up in your day-to-day reality. This is the leading edge that many of you who are sensitive enough to experience it are beginning to already pick up on and incorporate into your physical personality structure and thus then your physical experience. But it will increase, it will magnify, it will amplify, it will expand even further. As you now have a conscious recognition of this particular format, of this particular diagram of the 9 levels of consciousness, and incorporate that into your actual visual centers in the brain, it will now seep in a very different way and start rewiring the neurological net in your entire body, in your atomic structure, in a very specific way as to enhance and also simultaneously buffer the experience of your transition into new parallel realities that are far more representative of the reality vibrations that you say you prefer. Nevertheless, even with all of this going on within you, first and foremost, you must always remember you have chosen to have what you call a physical experience, and thus then it requires more than just sitting still and contemplating the ideas we are sharing with you today. It will always, first and foremost, and of paramount importance, be required that you act in physical reality in conjunction with these things we are delivering to you in this way. That you take action in the direction of your highest joy, because that will be the vibration that will allow you to experience higher communication with the higher mind through the template reality and allow for greater accessibility of the belief systems that are closest to the template level, and greater understanding of the emotional systems that are secondary, and greater understanding still of the thought patterns that go on in the conscious mind, and greater understanding still of the unconscious patterns that go on in the deep level number 8, and the collective agreement ideas that go on automatically within your collective agreements that you have established and anchored yourself to in order to have a physical reality experience to begin with. Allow this to sink in now, and even as you contemplate the diagrams you have been given, allow yourselves to truly understand the necessity and the importance of always raising your vibration to discover and identify your beliefs, not lowering it. When you dive, quote unquote, down into your belief system level, you are actually flying up. You are rising up, rising higher, forming a stronger bond, in a sense, with the higher mind through the template level reality. Allow yourself to feel that rising sensation anytime you contemplate the idea of getting in touch with a belief system. Do not any longer think that you are going down deeper into your
consciousness, but that you're actually rising higher above the levels of thought, above the levels of feeling, to the level of belief that is blueprint, that is understanding, that is template, that is closest to the higher mind, which is the big picture, the high point of view standing on the mountaintop that can see far and wide and deeply into time, past, present, future, all one from the higher mind's point of view, and moves freely through the concept of time, even as the physical mind moves freely through the concept of space. For in the higher mind realm, as it moves through the concept of time, it requires very little space, and everything happens in the same space. And the higher mind senses this and experiences everything happening here, even though the physical mind experiences space as everything happening there, but experiences everything as now, as one time, in that sense, and has these concepts of past and future, which are never directly experienced. From the higher mind point of view, what you call the idea of the past and future are directly experienced as greater portions of the now, and thus by having the multidimensional experience of time, knows that all of that is taking place right here in very little space. So these are the complementary aspects of the spirit as it fragments itself into higher mind, template level reality, and the physical mind with its own fragmentations of unconscious, subconscious, and conscious mind that are anchored into the automatic consciousness of individual patterns and the collective consciousness of collective agreements that you will abide by in order to have a physical reality experience at all. So let this sink in. Let yourselves ponder this. And as you do so, let yourselves now take a deep breath and begin to relax, even as you look at, even as you visualize the diagram that has been provided of the 9 levels. Let yourself blur your vision a little bit so it is not quite so sharply in focus. Allow yourselves to simply understand for the first time that your belief systems are up in vibration and not down. And allow yourself the freedom to rise to that level anytime you desire to identify, to know, to understand a belief, so that you are not sinking down, 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 back again into the unconscious level of patterns and habits, but rising up, up, up to the freeing level of knowing your beliefs, of identifying your beliefs in a conscious fashion. Allow yourself to breathe deeply and easily and find that centered place of balanced peace as you let the visualization of this diagram sink into your receiver that you call the brain, and allow the corpus callosum that divides the brain, and allow the pineal gland that infuses the brain with multidimensional essences to comprehend and grasp these ideas to the degree where the vibrations that they give off will allow for the rewiring of the neurological net in such a fashion as to allow this to become your first nature of understanding, so that anytime you even begin to contemplate exploring the realms of your belief, you will find yourself and your vibrational frequency automatically rising to the task rather than lowering to some dark dimension of the unknown. Always, 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 the answers to anything you seek are up, not down in vibration. Down will only create more forgetfulness, more automatic consciousness, more repetition of things you say you don't prefer, more ensconcement into the idea of habit and pattern in an unconscious way. That is what the down vibration does, for it was through the down vibration that you created the crystallization and the limitations and the experience you call physical reality. It was through the down vibration that you created the experience of forgetting that you are a total being. So anytime you allow your vibration to go down,
you will only be creating more separation, more segregation, more forgetfulness, more inability to know what it is you need to know. Anytime you really want to know, anytime you really desire an answer, you must always go up in frequency, because that's the only place you are capable of comprehending and even perceiving the idea of the information that will address the questions you've created in the forgetful spaces. Always go up. Look up. Look to the light. That's why the sun on your world is up, not down. Look up to the light. All the answers reside in the light of your total being. And if you allow yourself to understand how to implement this 9 levels of consciousness within you in a conscious fashion, then you will be at the true balance point in your relationship between physical and higher mind. You will then allow yourself to function in a physical way as the total spirit, that is the combination of the two. And you will have greater access to the individual soul level and the oversoul level and levels of source of all that is above and beyond all that. Go up. Rise to the occasion. For you are the occasion of your reality. We will allow you now a little bit of time to absorb this diagram, breathing deeply, breathing easily, at a place of peace and relaxation. Let yourself become rewired. Just allow it to occur. Do not fear. Do not go down in frequency with this experience. Go up. Know that your higher mind knows what it's doing. Know that the template level reality is perfectly formatted for the blueprint that will serve your physical mind best. And know now, if only for the first time, know now that your beliefs are closest to the higher mind and that your thoughts are farthest away. And that is why beliefs generate feelings, which generate thoughts, is because it comes from the top down, never from the bottom up. Ponder this, and we will resume this transmission in what you call a live fashion, so that we may discuss and explore together these concepts in any statements, questions, or desires you have to discuss this information. Take a short break. I will say good day to you this day of your time. How are you all? All right. We thank you first and foremost for co-creating this interaction with us this day of your time, for allowing us to transmit this information to each and every one of you individually and all of you together collectively. We thank you for your co-creation and the gift that you are giving to our civilization in allowing us to experience each and every one of you. Let us begin this part of the transmission, this continuation of the idea of the 9 levels of consciousness, by saying that we would like to clarify our clarification. As many of you now recognize by the diagrams that you hold in your hands,
there is a little bit of a different order to the things than we initially discussed in the initial pre-recorded transmission. Allow us to explain this difference. The idea that we were discussing was primarily how the physical mind perceives the idea of the individual automatic mind and the collective automatic mind, with a continuation of the recognition that as the physical mind tends in your reality to think of thoughts as highest, of emotions as secondary, of beliefs as lower, it also continues that idea and assumes that the individual automatic mind and the collective automatic mind are lower still. So from the physical mind's typical point of view, as has existed on your planet for quite some time, it considers the individual automatic mind and the collective automatic mind to be the lowest levels, the 8th level and the 9th level. So the description of that as the 8th and 9th levels are from the perspective of the physical mind, as it tends to think of these things, including the beliefs and emotions, as being under, as being lower than the idea of the conscious mind. Look at the very definition you subscribe in that sense, or label the idea of the subconscious, sub meaning under. So in the idea we were expressing initially, we were simply describing more often than not how the physical mind actually sees these things, and thus how the physical mind experiences these things. Because as the physical mind labels such things as being lower, underneath, sub, shall we say, to the conscious mind, it thus then does create a shadow version of these things, a shadow reflection of these things in physical reality to reinforce its belief. Because all belief systems are self-perpetuating and are designed, are constructed to make it seem as if there is no other belief possible. So when the physical mind does lock on to a belief or an idea that the thought pattern, that the conscious mind is the highest level and that feelings in the subconscious are lower and that beliefs in the unconscious are lower still, it will continue to assume that it must also go lower still to investigate or explore the idea of the individual connection to automatic mind, what you would call the themes that you chose to explore as an individual, and it assumes it must go lower still to discover what the collective agreements are. And thus then that is the experience that the physical mind has. But as you can see from the diagram in your hand, that is not actually the positions that these things occupy in their relation to one another when they are created. As we said, these things are created from the top down. So if you allow yourself some degree of perception with this, you will see that in reality, so to speak, going from the oversoul level down to the individual soul, and as we have indicated on the diagram, also synonymous to some degree with the word individual spirit, and we will explain the difference in a moment, thus continuing down into the creation of the reality and the world that harbors the higher mind, and thus going down in vibration to create the template level reality. The next level that is actually created is the collective level, because you must lay out the foundation of the game. You must lay out the game board before you can create the piece that plays on that board, to use what you would call perhaps a chess analogy. So the idea is that you must create the playing field first, and that is the level of collective agreements. Then you can start to describe what your individual agreement is within that collective, what your individual theme of exploration is on that game board, on that foundational framework that is represented by the collective level. Then, once you have identified that theme, once you have described that, once you have fashioned that on an individual basis, Thus, then do you continue downward to crystallize that idea of individuality into the threefold concept, the threefold prism of the personality, of the physical mind, starting again at the highest level with the beliefs, and thus then going down through the feeling level, the intuitive level, the intuition levels, and finally thus then to the lowest level that is actually created, the lowest vibrational frequency that is actually crystallized, which is the level you call thoughts. And thus then, as you can see on the physical diagram, the idea of the higher belief system, the middle emotional level, and the lower level of thoughts combine to form the physical personality that you can also refer to as the ego structure. Another name in that sense for the personality, not meaning positive or negative in either context, just the basic fundamental neutral ego structure whose job it is to keep you focused in the physical reality game. Thus then, by the behaviors exhibited by the personality, by the ego structure, does it thus then reflectively reveal what the thought patterns are that stem from the feeling level, that stem from the belief level, and back up to the individual automatic mind, the collective automatic mind, going into the template level that thus then connects to the higher mind and into the individual soul and spirit level and up to the oversoul level. Does this make sense? All right. Now, we can discuss this further when we get into the idea of questions and answers, but for now, understand that this diagram is representative of how the levels are created from the top down, how they are actually physically crystallized, and their actual construction relationship to each other, while at the same time, from what your physical point of view has assumed, it would seem to be just the opposite. That thoughts are on the top, feelings are underneath that, beliefs are lower still, the individual automatic mind lower still, and the collective automatic mind the lowest of all. But that's the shadow reflection of the true construct which you now have in your hands, which represents the construction from the top down. Now, let us explain a little bit more about the idea of why the individual soul level also says spirit. They are almost the same thing, but not quite. Let us define it in this way. When the oversoul, as we say, splits itself, divides itself, vibrates itself into discrete souls, if you wish to use that term, it's up to you, doesn't matter. It creates an energy essence that is individualized to a certain extent, but doesn't really in any way represent the specific personality that it will become by lowering itself still into physical reality. It is like the idea of unfashioned clay. In that sense, it is relatively featureless. It has the true essence of the total being, but it doesn't really have the mark or the stamp of the idea called personality or individuality as a person. But after the soul allows itself to create the higher mind, the template level reality, and the personality structure of beliefs, emotions, and thoughts, in that sense, going down through after having done the idea of the collective automatic and the individual automatic, after it experiences physical reality, that soul, in a sense, is stamped with an impression of the personality, of the discrete and unique and distinct personality that soul experienced itself to be in its theme of exploration. Thus then, when that personality dies, when it goes back up into the higher levels and goes back to the individual soul level, it arrives back on that level as the individual spirit. The spirit being representative of the person you would recognize of having lived the life. So the idea is that then when people contact spirits of the dead, they are contacting the individual soul level. But the individual soul that is no longer simply the raw clay, but that which has been fired into the specific personality stamped with the specific personality recognizable as the specific personality experience that it had in physical reality, and that's the difference between those two terms. So the individual soul level and the individual spirit level are the same as a level, but vibrationally, one starts out very raw, and the other starts out very, in that sense, ends up very specifically taking with it all the experience it absorbed from the physical reality journey, from the physical reality experience. Does that make sense? All right. Thus, then, that physical personality, having that experience, imprinting the soul with its spirit, thus then going back to that level, thus then the oversoul can thus then gain knowledge, gain experience from that spirit that has now been fashioned out of the raw clay of the individual soul that was broken off from the oversoul level. Does that make sense? So thus then you see this coming and going. Again, this is all somewhat euphemistic, since all of this in a sense is still taking place within the collective consciousness, within the consciousness, the greater consciousness that you are. It is all taking place within that. So this nomenclature of coming down and going up and all that are simply conveniences of translation in your language. Because as we have said many times, even the experience you call physical reality is just an experience. The experience is real, but physical reality does not really have any solidity unto itself apart from what your consciousness creates itself to experience. It is simply a reflection. As all levels are that are less than the one, it is simply a reflection of another aspect, another perspective, another point of view of the consciousness of all that is expressing itself in the unique way, the unique frequency, the unique window, the unique doorway, the unique vibration that you are created to be as an individual, split off from the total source of all that is and the one. Does that make sense? Are you sure? All right. So, allow yourselves thus then to take these diagrams and allow yourselves to ponder and let it sink in, as we said, so that it becomes not second nature but first nature to you. So that automatically when you begin to explore the idea, when you begin to know that it is important to get in touch with the beliefs, you will allow yourself to raise the frequency and not lower the frequency to do so. And in allowing yourself to do that, as we said, you'll become much more adept at receiving communication from the higher levels, because in a sense, from the physical reality level, from the thought pattern level, there really is only up. Even though you can create the shadow experience and make it seem as if you're going down to another place when you lower your vibration, in that sense, all you're doing is creating that repetitive cycle that simply keeps you focused in the limited physical reality perspective, the limited ego reality, and by doing it that way, by lowering your vibration to look for answers, by thinking you have to go down in consciousness to find out what you need to find out, you simply reinforce the idea of that physical ego structure, and you put so much burden on it that it starts to resist and starts to, in a sense, resent all of the responsibility you are heaping on it for doing the job of things that should be being done on higher levels, and that's what makes it kick over and snap into what you call the negative ego. So thus then, the idea of going down in vibration to look for answers actually generates the concept you call the negative ego, the resistant ego, the idea of that which knows it is being put upon far more than it was designed to handle, and in a sense, fights back. So the idea thus then is it becomes caught up in all of these ideas. It cannot find a way out because all you're feeding it are belief systems that say you have to go down, you have to go down, you have to go down. And as you find there is really nowhere to go because that's just a shadow perspective of those lower levels that aren't really down there, you allow the ego to become more and more frustrated. You allow that feedback mechanism to amplify itself, magnify itself, compound on itself, because it keeps telling you there's nothing down there. I can't go. You keep saying, you go down there and you find out. You find out what I need to know. There's nothing down. You go down there. and finally it will rebel. It will fight. It will become so frustrated by the orders it is being given that it will cease to function in its proper way. It will start to break down. It will become, in that sense, incapable of the communication that it was designed to communicate, to keep you focused in physical reality in a lighter way. And you will find thus then that the only way that you can repair that is to really truly thus then go up and find a way to let the ego know from the higher levels that it is loved, that it is cherished, that it is valued, that you can negotiate with it from a higher point of view, let it know it is part and parcel of the total being, and that the annihilation that it fears through change will not happen, that it will go with you, but that it will only be allowed to do its job, the job it was designed to do, was to simply keep you focused in the physical reality experience, because that's all the ego really is designed to do. It is not designed in any way, shape, or form, as we have said before, to conceive of things. That's the purview of the higher mind. It is only designed to experience what's happening. And if you give it the task of trying to figure out how things are happening and what's happening and seek those things out, find out where they are and what's going on down there in those subconscious levels, you will only push it to a place that doesn't really exist. And anytime you push against the wall, when there is really nothing beyond that wall, you add more energy for that thing that you're pushing against to spring back in your face in such a strong way that it will knock you over. It will, as you say, knock you for a loop. So, ease up on the physical personality. Do not demand of it that it do a job it is not designed to do. Always allow yourself to know that you are inviting the ego to go along with you up the ladder and up in vibration on this exciting journey of self-discovery of what you have created your unique aspect of creation to be. And when you begin to truly do that in an automatic way every day, every time, in every situation, and every circumstance, always going up to find out what the beliefs are, then you will find that more and more information will be trickling down from the higher mind through the conduit of imagination, through the idea of the template level, through the idea of the collective automatic, through the idea of the individual automatic, and into those levels that construct the personality and into the beliefs and make them so much easier to shift and so much easier to change and so much easier to define in ways that are in alignment with who you prefer to be. Does that make sense? Again, you can look at this in some way, shape, or form as the idea of the creation of a game of chess where you have to lay out the board and then you have to define the concept of what particular piece you will be playing the part of. And thus then, when you create the chess piece, let us say, just for example, in that sense, it is what you call the knight, you allow yourself thus then with the belief to define what material you'll be making out of. That's the foundation. And with the emotions, you'll be defining exactly what the texture of that material shall be, smooth, rough. And with the idea of the thoughts, you'll be defining exactly what shape that chess piece should be. It should look like this. And thus then, once you have done that, it will have the ability to take the actions. In other words, it will have the behavior that it needs to have in the game. It will move in the squares according to how it has been defined, according to the theme you wish to explore, and it will interact with all the other pieces in the appropriate manner for which it was designed. So it really is as simple as understanding it in that way, if that helps by analogy. Do you understand? All right then. Thank you. And please understand that it is not necessarily meant in any negative way should you find yourself using this chess analogy to think of yourself as a pawn. It is just a term. Pawns are very important in the game of chess and can, in the right circumstances, checkmate the king. So allow yourself to understand that you can equalize the board in terms of the idea of what each of those pieces does, because each of you is a unique piece, and cherish the abilities and the material and the textures and the shapes out of which you have fashioned the idea of your particular game piece. Knowing that when you are fully aligned with how the board has been laid out and what the concept of your piece is and the material from which you've created it and the texture that you've given it and the shape that you've given it, that it will have the correct behavior. It will automatically move as it needs to move on the game board. It will interact with all the other pieces as it needs to interact in perfect harmony and synchronicity going through that particular game. And you will allow yourself to have a very enjoyable game that will be a very profound learning experience. And thus then creating the idea, fashioning the idea, imprinting the idea of the spirit upon the individual soul that the oversoul can thus then relate to and experience from and grow from and expand from, and thus be more capable and even more capable of splitting off into more souls to become spirits. In that sense, having journeyed through the experience of physical reality in the way we have just laid out. Does that make sense?